Somebody was asking over break, what about if I've got a student who, we can do this kind of thing at school, but we're not getting any follow-through at home? You know, is it worth our while? Should we even be doing this kind of stuff? You know, how much change can we expect, and how rapidly can we expect change, and all these kinds of things. And now I can't find my belt to hook this thing back on. Obviously, I mean, one of the short answers to that is that we have the legal requirement of engaging in what's appropriate regardless of whether the families do it or don't. All right? So even if mom and dad say, yeah, you know what, we aren't going to do this. Great, but we're not going to do it. It doesn't free us up at all. Okay? On the other hand, part of the issue for me is the fact that kids, for the most part, can differentiate environments. All right? So even if I know at home I can, you know, act out and mom or dad will pay attention to all of my misbehaviors and that's how I get my attention. If I come to school and you guys are strategic in your use of self in terms of what you attend to, and that when you're doing something that's inappropriate, even though I have to attend to it, I become I'm talking too fast again. I become very businesslike. And it's kind of like I was saying, like when I move this glass, I don't talk to it. All right? It's just an object. When I've got a kid who's doing something for attention, when they're doing the wrong behavior and I have to attend, I want to engage them as object-like as I possibly can. And when they do the right thing, even though they have pissed me off all morning, the minute they do something right, I've got to be able to shunt that off and say, wonderful! That's the best, you know. Now, that's hard. Both of those things are hard. Again, oftentimes using this kind of skills, even with my staff that I'm working with, my paras, whoever, in terms of being able to help them think about what's going on, because you're going to get certain people who go, that kid just needs a good swat in the butt. If somebody just spank them a couple of times, they'd knock that nonsense off, and this whole idea that I'm going to trap this kid in through reinforcement's a lot of damn work that doesn't need to be done. Being able to talk with them and help them through this process too. Now, I've mentioned this before, but the other side is that most parents want to do the best for their child. I don't know of anyone who gets up in the morning and says, you know what I want to do? I want to do a crappy job today. I think as mom and dad, as teachers, as whatever, we get up and do the best job we possibly can. And if I'm not doing something well, usually it's because I don't know what to do, or I'm not aware I'm doing something wrong. Now, one of the other things that I've done a lot of, and I've mentioned this before, but I'll just throw it out here again, I still stop at almost every Goodwill and Salvation Army store I pass. And I go in and I buy up all the cassette recorders they have. You can usually buy them now for about $2 a crack, because nobody buys these things anymore. All right? Walgreens still... Thank you. Oh, no. Walgreens still sells these for the 120-minute tapes, brand new 120-minute tapes. I will go to families and say, okay, if the problem's bedtime, if the problem is homework, if the problem is getting the kid on the bus in the morning, wherever the problem falls down, what I'd like you to do is take this cassette recorder, put this 120-minute tape in, put it on record, put it on a shelf 20 minutes before the problem's ever going to happen. So if it's bedtime, go up and put it wherever the bedtime process, the bath, whatever the situation is, put it on record and just let it record. Bring me the tape. I want to hear the interaction between you and your child so that maybe I can begin to help identify the things you're doing that are helpful and perhaps things that you're doing that are getting in the way of your being successful. Now, I've had a lot of success with parents doing that. I can't say I've had all that much success as far as that every time you do that it's going to change what happens. But I find that oftentimes parents don't know how to disengage from the fight. They trigger a power struggle. With a lot of kids on the spectrum, they use way too much language. Okay? And by sitting down and listening to the tapes, you can begin to get, because you can't go sit in their home, right? You can begin to get information that again becomes data you can use in this helping process. You know, you can look in terms of what's going on to hopefully help them chart a more effective strategy. All right? Other issues or questions? Yeah.
Unfortunately, with our deaf children, most of the parents don't sign.
There you go.
So now the audio is not...
There takes care of my solution, doesn't it? Damn, I didn't think that through.
But a lot of it is because they can't communicate with them.
Right.
Bottom line. But it might even be helpful to hear what the parent's saying to them, even though we
Yeah.
won't understand what they might not
And you might be able you know, it's going to be much more invasive, and I don't know how successful it would be, but you might be able to do some video. You know, that's a little tougher to do, but at least it allows you to get some information. And depending on how motivated the parent might be, I might stick a little video camera up there and take a video. I didn't think about that. Thank you for saying that. See? All right. I get caught in this stuff too. All right. Other questions, comments, concerns? Yes?
So that's all legal to do. See, we wanted to do that in a certain case, but we were wondering about the legality. Can we not ask a parent to videotape? They're saying, oh, the kid does all these wonderful things at home, but doesn't repeat the same behavior at school. And obviously you have a different environmental setting.
Can you, I mean, you can always ask.
Right.
Can you demand? No.
Okay.
All right. Can you say, you bring me I want to see this kid do this. You know, no, you can't make a parent do anything. Can you ask them to do it? Absolutely. All right. My experience with both audio and videotaping is that families are generally much more open to it if you bring the tape in, we'll view it, you take the tape with you. You know, I will never have this tape alone. I will never be able to make copies of it. You're not, you know, this is yours to destroy or keep for posterity, whatever you want to do, because they don't trust us. You know, that's a hard piece of evidence. And, you know, just like we don't want to be taped, generally, it's one of the bad things of all these new cell phones. We're now getting kids who are taping us as teachers, and it's just killing us in some of these situations, because we are, in fact, our own worst enemy sometimes, and all of a sudden there's a videotape that there's somebody showing of us doing our bad stuff. But that parents, I've been surprised parents have been as open as they have been when I've asked them to do it. Again, they want a solution. All right. Okay, the other thing that is don't be afraid to be very creative and help them be creative. You're going to come up with some just stupid ideas. That's great. Throw them up there. Again, you're brainstorming. I want as many as I possibly can have here to just kind of keep things open. It also, in the next phase when I start dumping stuff, some of the bizarre ones are the easiest ones to start dumping. And so you get to the process really quickly of saying, okay, we're going to start shaving. If I've only come up with 3 ideas and all 3 of them are really challenging possible ideas, which one to get rid of becomes tougher. If I've got 9 and 3 of them are silly, you know, or you couldn't possibly do, those are easy to get rid of. All right. So I want to help the teacher focus on the preferred scenario and think about what they want. They've got to take ownership. This is not going to happen without something on the process of a plan. I want something to be different than it is now. All right. If I'm going to have something different, it's going to require action. All right. Wishing's not going to happen. You know, I can send the kid to the principal 6 times. The principal hasn't done anything so far. They're probably not going to do it tomorrow. You know, if we keep doing the same thing, was it Einstein who said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome? It's amazing how many times we do that. I want to look at the outcome, not the process right now. That is critical. What do you want this to look like? So I want John to be engaged. Not how am I going to get him engaged. I want him working. I want when I give an assignment, he gets to work. I want this work completed. Okay? That's the outcome I'm looking for. All right? The process I'm not worried about yet. We'll get to the process. What does this look like? John's not sleeping. John's not telling me to do something with the work that's physiologically impossible for me to do with the work. All right? He's working. Okay. What would you like your classroom to look like? What would you like to have John, what would it look like to have John working? What would you do if you weren't a teacher? If we're going to that whole issue of, and I actually, when I get a teacher who says that, I sometimes like to explore that. Wow, sounds like you're really frustrated. Well, what would you do if you weren't teaching?
Walmart greeter.
You know, somebody told me there's a Walmart greeter in Batavia, Illinois that drives a Rolls Royce. It's an old retired guy. Is that true?
It was on the news.
Yeah, I want to go meet this guy.
Good greeter. Good greet you will.
You know.
Greet you with gold.
That's right, that's right. He says, I don't need this job. I'm just here because I want to say hi. Okay. What would you be able to accomplish if all your students were actively engaged in learning? So again, what am I going to try? What is this going to look like? Not the process of getting there, just what does the outcome look like? Okay. I want to look at that brainstorming. I don't want to have judgment. I'm going to suspend all those judgments. I'm not going to try to criticize. I'm not going to look to how real this is. I want stuff to just be coming out. Right? Again, hard for us. Usually because we're at this time crunch, and it's kind of like, I don't have time to do this crap. Here's what you should be doing. Just listen to me and life would be good. All right? I know the answer. Okay, remember, they got to do it. All right? Use one idea to take off to the other. Look at wild possibilities. You're also listening to see, is this the teacher who sees the glass as half empty or half full? Okay. What am I working with in terms of the energy the teacher has? What are they bringing to this issue? How much support am I going to have to provide? We talked about this, that one of the big reasons that behavior intervention plans don't work is they're never implemented. Or if they're implemented so poorly, there'd be no way that they would work.
This is something I use with both teachers and the parents is your goal to teach or is your goal to punish? And depending upon the mindset.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before. Oftentimes, I will quickly jump, and especially if a teacher's got a kind of a punishment mode, and say, what would you do if this was a math error? Okay, so I've got a kid who's not adding correctly. I've talked with Carrie. Carrie's got this pattern of making this mistake and adding. Do I just keep marking him wrong? Most teachers don't know. You'd have to figure out where the problem's falling apart, where's the mistake being at. I'm going to have to reteach. Guess what? Behavior is absolutely the same as academics. With teachers, I find myself constantly shifting back and forth between academics. Would you do this for math? Would you do this for reading? No. Why? I think we're going to do it for behavior. Why would you think that would be effective for behavior? If every time Tracy made a mistake and put down the wrong number for addition, if I said, that's it, go stand in the corner, and I never retaught her, would my making her stand in the corner help her learn to add? No. Okay? Why do I think if I've got a kid who doesn't know how to handle anger, by punishing him and sending him out of my room is going to somehow help him understand how to handle anger? It's not going to work. All right? Teachers will go, oh. And you'll see this kind of like little light go on every now and then, and that's what you're shooting for in many cases. All right? I want to look for optimism. I want to look for hope. Can they? Oh, yes.
I know you were talking about like the number one reason why behavior intervention plans don't work is because they're not implemented. They're not implemented.
Yeah. Yep.
When you realize that you have a very poorly written behavior intervention plan, I feel like sometimes we don't take any steps to correct it because it's more work, it's another meeting, and it's us admitting we wrote a really crappy one to begin with. So, like, how can you address that issue so that you have a good plan in place that you have a better chance of having some success with?
I generally recommend that when you develop a behavior intervention plan, that you try to have a check-in point maybe 4 weeks down the road. That's just a build-in. Now, it may not involve the entire team. What can I do? But just as an automatic, there's going to be a check-in because a number of things are going to happen. One is that as a teacher, I think this sounds okay, but once I start implementing it, this is a pain in the ass. Right? I can't do this, right? Or the kid is, they've given that behavior up, now they're doing this for attention. All right? They have swapped behaviors on me. What do I do now? Okay? So do I have an automatic check-in that will give me a chance to kind of tweak that plan if I need to tweak it? The bigger issue to me isn't the planning time, although that's a pain. The bigger issue is that we have nobody to monitor. There's just no monitoring process going in. So again, most of us think we're doing okay. So let's say that again, I picked on Tracy earlier about praise to reprimand ratio, and all of a sudden she's doing 6 times more reprimand than praise, and I've got this, this oppositional defiant kid, and I've got to slow down, who is misbehaving, and Tracy is being very negative with him, and he's responding to all of this negative, and I know I've got to get things more positive. If there's nobody monitoring Tracy, she still thinks she's praising more than she's reprimanding. But we haven't seen any real change here. How is she going to get that feedback? That to me, and I wish I had a really nice answer for that in our schools. I know we've talked about, you know, a peer triad system. I try whenever possible to get teachers to find 2 colleagues who will work with them, give up part of their planning period, come in once, you know, if 3 of us are doing this week, you're the host teacher. I'm going to come in, I'm going to observe you, because I know putting plans, teaching, working with these kids is tough. I'm going to watch, I'm going to give you feedback. I'm going to talk about 2 things you're doing well, 2 things you could improve upon. You could aim me in terms of saying, one thing I'm working on is my ratio of praise to reprimand with Randy. I want you to come in, I want you to watch this. All right, and that's going to be one of the things I'm going to look for. Next week, you're the host teacher. We come in and we do it, so you've got 2 people giving you feedback at least once a week. We'll never see enough administrative time. We'll never see enough people to do it, and if we don't find some way to use our peers, I don't know of any way we're going to get that kind of feedback. And I think we need it desperately as teachers.
I actually struggle a lot with this, especially in the high school, because the kids have a different teacher for every class.
Yeah.
And they all have different, I mean, they all teach differently, and then the kids, I'm thinking of what kids do that. It's a nightmare every time, but they don't, behavior plan could be well written, but when you have so many different personalities, and I'm there once a week as a social worker, and they're the service provider, the teacher that's assigned to, like the high school level, there'll be a special
Case manager, yeah.
But they have full case, so it's not like they're,
Right.
they just have it, it's like whole like division almost, the homeroom that they have them. So they're trying to work with me, we wrote the behavior plan together, but it's that like getting it to actually make it happen with all the teachers.
Right.
The kid keeps getting suspended and sent to the discipline office for stuff that if they did the behavior plan, it wouldn't be happening, so I don't know how to.
Right. And there really are not a lot of good answers out there. I know that, how to say this is politically correct. One of the dilemmas that we have, I think, with inclusion is the fact that behavior doesn't go well with inclusion. General education teachers are not comfortable with behavior. And sudden, I'm working with Sally over here, who's got a behavior problem, and she's got a real problem if somebody invades her space, or if somebody gives her a negative comment, she can become very aggressive. All right? And she's gotten in some fights, and she's had a number of problems, and she's been suspended, and we've threatened expulsion, and all these things are going on. Now, I've been working with her. I'm a social worker. I've been working with her on some anger stuff. I've even got a good special ed teacher who's been doing some stuff with her. She's now in Carrie's general ed math class. And what I want is for Carrie to set a problem up so that we can ensure that Sally is using these skills we've been teaching her to handle problems like this. So I want you to do a math issue that's going to require Sally to share space. Now, there's a good chance she's not going to do this well, and she's going to go to hell in a handbasket. But it's okay because we need a chance for her to practice this new skill. Now, as a general education teacher with 25 other kids in my classroom, what am I going to tell you? Are you flipping nuts? There's no way in hell I'm going to do that. If Sally will sit quietly and not cause trouble, I am not going to rattle that cage. I don't care what she does, as long as she isn't disrupting my class, life is good. And what we're seeing is that a lot of our elementary and in the middle school, we just kind of keep these kids quiet. Whatever it takes, keep them quiet. They get to high school, they've never had a chance to learn the skills to be able to earn the credits, and now they can't finish high school, and now we're getting schools who are being cited for not having enough kids with emotional and behavioral disorders or other behavior problems graduating, and we blame the high school. The problem was way down here. All right, it's a very systemic issue. And in some cases, because depending on the behavior, quite frankly, a general education classroom may not be the best place to work with this kid for huge segments of the day. We may have to have a more restrictive environment depending on the behavior. That's not popular. We don't have those resources. Although we're seeing now with the testing and all this kind of stuff, and because special ed is the nail that pops up, usually for not making AYP, we are beginning to see kind of a backlash of more structured learning classrooms being developed around, which are just kind of your old EBD classrooms that now take, but they take cross-categorical kids who have a behavioral overload. Right? And we're seeing, now the dilemma is that we no longer know how to prepare teachers to teach in those classrooms. So now I've got kids with multiple levels of skills, multiple kinds of behaviors, and I don't know how to teach those kids anymore. So we've got a lot of problems cropping up around some of that kind of stuff that's becoming a dilemma. But I think, again, part of it's, can we own the problem? Can we identify the fact that this is a kid who needs to learn the skill? Where is he going to learn it? So where are we going to have the intensity to teach him how to handle anger, how to handle failure, how to identify his emotions so that every emotion doesn't become anger? Where is that going to happen? All right. Where are we going to give him the practice to elaborate that and actually lay that out and say, this is part of what's necessary? How are we going to do that? Who's going to do that? Where is it going to be done? All of those kind of situations come into play. But this, we're in a real, this is a fun time to be in education because everything's crazy, right? There's an old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Yeah, we've all been cursed. Okay? But I think sometimes that's where that brainstorming comes into play. Because oftentimes you can think, where I'm going to get support. Oftentimes if I'm going to do this, all right, so if I'm going to have Sally and I'm going to set this up, I better have at least another body in this room. Because when all hell goes, if it doesn't work, somebody's going to have to be able to work with Sally while I corral the rest of the students. All right, so we're going to give this a shot. Now, we know the first few times there's going to be when it's the toughest. Who's available?
Nobody.
You know? Well, that's where you start thinking about, that's where the brainstorming comes in. Who could we have do this? All right? Now, let's think of it this way. If it all goes to hell, who's going to be called? All of a sudden, people are going to be available. All right? If we think that, could we do it ahead of time instead of wait for the crisis? Could we identify a body or two that might actually be able to be around at that time? Rather than waiting for the crisis, then everybody has to respond. Can we think proactively? Okay. Characteristics that may hinder the progress: fear, fixed habits, rigidity, dependence on authority, perfectionism. You get a lot of teachers who, I'm very good at what I do and I don't want to try something different because I do this well. Difficulty taking risks. Okay. All those, and they're very common, very human things. Again, part of that being respectful, immediate, and concrete is that don't be afraid that you may bring these up. If I sense that, pick on somebody else here now. I already picked on Mary there. Who am I going to pick on? Sherry. So Sherry here is, you know, an incredible teacher. She's got a great reputation, and she's got the kid who is from hell, right? That breaks everything. I may have to talk about the fact that doing something different for this kid, taking her outside of her comfort zone, is something that a lot of people will be fearful about. There's a risk factor there in terms of that I could fail. My class won't look organized. All right? Can we begin to bring some of that kind of stuff up? So I'm trying to develop a sense of hope, look at possibilities, brainstorm, and then kind of see what those problems and solutions are in a little bit clearer perspective. I now want to kind of set that agenda. What are we going to do? So I'm going to summarize. It's going to be the key thing. Again, I'm maintaining on outcomes, not process. That's the hardest piece for us, because we want to go to process. I want to start giving her answers. I don't want answers yet. I just want to say, what is this going to look like? What do we want this to be? How do we want this outcome to be? All right? I want it to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic. I'd like to say, what kind of time are we looking at here? I'll get teachers we've got a kid who's 14 years old, has been engaged in this inappropriate behavior for 14 years. And they want to see it gone in 2 weeks. It's like, you know, that isn't going to happen. All right? I'll be happy if we make a considerable gain in the course of this year. And this would be considered a considerable gain. And, you know, he's not going to give this problem up. All right? Sometimes you have to help teachers realize that behavior change is a process, not an event. Because again, think about how we have set this up for teachers. Kelly is a problem in my classroom. She's becoming disruptive. I send her little keister out of the room down to the principal. The principal is supposed to do what? Fix the problem, so that when Kelly comes back in, I will never see this problem again. All right? And when that doesn't happen, as a teacher, what do we usually say? That damn principal isn't doing anything. Right? That principal's, if the principal's supposed to be effective, they're supposed to be fixing this problem. They're just coddle that kid. All right?
And we know too many times in elementary school, the principal does offer some sort of reward, either for sitting patiently or whatever, and then the child gets reward for going to the office.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Or if nothing else, I mean, I work in Chicago, a lot of the Chicago schools, there's still these great big, huge, big old 3-story brick buildings, right? And school goes till about the middle of June. So come about the middle of May till the end of the school year, what are those classrooms like? They're like a furnace. If I want to find air conditioning, what do I need to do as a kid? I need to misbehave, and I hope the principal's busy. I hope they're really busy. So I can sit here as long as possible and suck up some coolness. All right? I get to go to the office. I get to see who's sick. I get to see what's going on. That's the hub of the place, right? I've even been in offices myself waiting for the principal to see the kids who are being punished used as note runners. Right? You know, it's like much better than math. Come on, let's be honest, right? This is a whole lot more fun. So yeah, and sometimes those become part of what you have to look at when you look at why is our system working or not working. I know I used the example, but I'll just repeat it because I never remember what I say in different places. But I was asked one time to go to Sandwich, Illinois. They had started an in-school suspension program. And all of a sudden, everybody was going to in-school suspension. They thought they had developed this plan to really get rid of some of their problems. And kids who had never had a problem were starting to have problems. Well, what they had done is they had hired the sweetest little old lady to run their in-school suspension. And she was going, honey, what did you do to get sent down here? She was bringing cookies. I mean, you just see kids kind of going, math, cookies, right? And it just like blossomed, okay? I mean, it's the right person, wrong job kind of a thing, you know? But you have to look at that sometimes, especially when like if it's escape and avoidance. Are they escaping to or from? You know? That time frame, thinking about that, oftentimes I may have to ask families or teachers, when's a good time to implement this? It may not be right now. There may have to be some pre-work that has to get done before people are going to be ready to implement it. I'll tell you right now, anytime I do a program I want parents to do, I do not have them start it when I start it in the school. I always do school first, because as hectic as we are more controllable than most homes. So I want to see, does this plan have a prayer of working with this kid? And if it has to be tweaked, let's tweak it in the school. All right? Now the kid has learned, okay, when I do this, they're not going to necessarily attend. Damn. All right? Once they get that here, now I'm going to say, all right, Mom, Dad, when's a good time? I need 3 weeks that you can really put some concentrated effort to not getting sucked into this similar problem that we're having here. When could we implement it at home? And that's when we do it. Because now the parent does it and the kid kind of goes, shit, who told Mom? Right? Damn. All right, this has always worked and now it's not going to work. And they're going to generalize, it's going to have a much better chance of working. Homes are tough places. I'm doing dinner. You know, I've got 4 kids, whatever's going on. My dean made me stop it. I used to require students to have to spend a day from the time a kid got up to the time a kid went to bed with one of my families, so that they could see what it was like to walk in the shoes of a parent with a child with disabilities. Because it becomes very easy for us as teachers to blame parents. You know?
Why did they make you stop?
It's mostly safety. Unfortunately, many of the families aren't from Wilmot. And just getting to their home and being in a home and not, you know, that there's a safety issue. I did a couple of things my dean made me stop. I used to always make them have breakfast at the McDonald's on Western, right by Grant School. I used to make them have breakfast there because they could watch the drug deals going down as the kids are walking to school. And my issue was always, if anybody gave two shits for any of these children, you would never tolerate this kind of an environment. The fact that we do, we should be ashamed as a society. You know, and my teen says, "Are you kidding? You can't have them over there eating breakfast." Okay.
But I bet it was effective.
It had an impact. It had an impact. All right. So help teacher move from good intentions through broad aims to specific goals. Again, most of us have good intentions. Most of us has a sense, well, okay, he has to be successful. All right, so I'm going to try to increase his success level. All right. That's all still too general. What's that going to look like specifically? How am I going to make that as something I'm really doing? Okay, so I want to be a better teacher for John. You know, I want to see John be successful in school. All right, I'm going to develop work that can trap John into success. High interest with solid self-expectancy for his success. I may be identifying specific things. He likes these kinds of issues. He's good at doing this. I'm going to set up a lesson. If I want to be able to give him something he can do, the outcome I'm looking for is engagement. I will develop a lesson that will engage him. Okay. Commitment, all right? This is another one of those issues. Help people realize that there is no free lunch. Changing their behavior is going to be work. It's going to be hard. They're going to screw up. There's going to be failures. Right? Just like anything that we do or kids do, and that a failure doesn't mean something's not working. All right? Now, you'd never think that I was ever on a diet, but I have been. It just doesn't work. No. And part of it is because I don't implement it well. No. but when you're on a diet, right, you're going to have those days where you just go, Big Mac, right? And so, but do you give the whole thing up just because you went one day and had the Big Mac? Yesterday I had 2 Big Macs, okay? You know, they're great. Yeah, whatever they do, that's wonderful. Okay. But I have to keep committing to that plan, even though I know I'm going to fail from time to time. Do I still commit and keep doing it? All right? So again, basic empathy, probes, challenges, help them see the pitfalls. Help them predict what pitfalls may be in place there. All right? Let's say I've got this student that we're talking about at break time, where I've got a kid who is acting up and they want attention, and they're just kind of a little pain in the butt kid. All of a sudden, what am I going to have to do when they do something that's desirable? When they're doing the right thing, what do I have to do? I have to be very responsive to this kid who 2 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, was a pain in the patootie. What might my colleagues say?
How dare you reinforce it?
You're just coddling this kid. Absolutely. Why are you? They've been a jerk all day long. They do one little thing and you're like going, ooh, right? What is wrong with you? Use your head, all right? You're probably going to see some of that, all right? One of the pitfalls is the fact that you've asked, the kid said no, and all of a sudden now they want to do something right. You're going to be angry at this kid. All right? How are you going to deal with the anger that you might be feeling? Because kids do trigger emotions in us. That's one of the reasons that behavior is so much harder for us to address than academics. When a kid misadds, it doesn't trigger emotion in me. When a kid tells me to go screw myself, all right? Now an emotion's been triggered, okay? Yeah,
That's it. That's
yeah.
they're right.
It's a very, I mean, it's great to have that kind of power, right? All right. What's your state of readiness for change? Again, for the teacher, if I'm going to ask Tracy to start being more attentive to his desired behavior, to establish situations that's going to pull more desired behavior. So that may require some changes in the nature of the task that she has for him, those kinds of things. How ready are you? You've got, for me, the biggest dilemma we have in education is the academic diversity of the students in our classrooms. We are not prepared for that. And so all of a sudden, if I'm a 9th grade teacher, I've got kids who are still struggling with letter sound recognition to kids who can read at the 12th freshman year in college level. And I've got to make all this work for all these kids. I don't know how to do that. as a teacher. But if all of a sudden I'm trying to capture this kid who's got letter sound recognition issues, how ready am I to put that kind of differentiation into place? Do I need something in the front end? Okay. How much work do I want to do? Now the other piece of that is, do you have to change everything at once? No. Can we take one unit? Let's start with one unit. Let's just see if this is going to work. Can we differentiate one unit? That's all I'm asking you right now. We're not going to look at the whole, all of his math, all of his science, all of his language arts. I'm looking at one unit in science. Okay. To what degree are you choosing this goal freely? That's a tough one for teachers because, again, there's a lot of legality aspects to what's going on here. In some cases, they may not want to do it. They may not feel comfortable doing it. They still got to do it. And that's one of those pitfalls, you know. And it may be that I can sense that you're not behind this. It's a plan. It's written up. It's part of what we've got to do. You are going to be responsible for implementing this, but I can see right now you aren't with us. All right? What kind of support are we going to have in place there? What are we going to have to do? And then the issue in terms of rating its appeal. All right? This is the goal, to ensure that teachers committing themselves freely, willingly, and understanding the true costs of what's got to go on, and, you know, truth, justice, and the American way. All right? That's what we'd like to see happen. If we were doing therapy, this kind of thing, that's what you want with your client. We're not therapists. We're consultants or collaborators, and sometimes we don't. They're not going to be there, but we'd like it as much as possible because that's when I'm going to get fewer of those yes buts. Okay. So Mrs. Barnes is frustrated because John refuses to actively engage in most of his assignments. He's withdrawn, and when confronted, he can become defiant or totally uncooperative. Mrs. Barnes feels his parents blame her, and she feels she is failing as a teacher. You have validated her feelings, and she recognizes she has not done enough to solve the situation in a constructive way. Now it is, how can you help this teacher move towards the future she wants? All right? So you don't want to do have you tried, you don't want to do you just tell them. They've got to be part of that planning. Again, you don't want to be that shell answer person. Okay. What would you like to see happen in this situation in the future? What would you like John to do in the classroom? Again, it's actions, not solutions. All right. So maybe it's John will do regularly assigned work. I would find a job outside of teaching. I would find a way to motivate John to actively engage in class. John and his family will move to another school district. John will be removed from my class. I will find ways to actively engage John socially and academically. I will begin to enjoy teaching again. Those are some outcomes. All right. So now, what do I want to work on? So looking at some of those, look at the goals stated specifically that I'm going to actually actively engage in. I want to learn how to develop instructional tasks that match John's abilities and interests. I want to be able to talk with John about his strengths and capabilities as a student. I want to recapture the joy of teaching and learn to welcome the challenges of supporting student success.
How did you get from the last slide to this one?
That's where you're actively helping them sit through.
We're still moving to another district. And
That's right. You start looking at each of those and say, can I make you move to a different district?
Can you recommend it?
You know. You know, this school sucks. I don't know if anybody's told you this. That's right. Whatever compelled you to move here?
Praising a student or something, right? Even if they've done something wrong, how do you get to do that? And I was thinking that maybe something helpful to tell teachers is that when you focus on what's good, you enjoy it more. Because I have a student who's going into the year, he'd been at our site last year, and I knew he was coming to my room, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to hate my life because he just knows how to push your buttons. But I found that when I started focusing on what he was doing well, he wasn't so hard. Mm-hmm. Because I was looking at the positives, and I was enjoying and celebrating his successes, and that emotional response became generally positive.
Right.
Than the negative, oh, he does this all the time, every day.
And nothing succeeds like success. That's oftentimes like where you pick something you can be successful on. So if we're going to work with John, and John's a real tough one, maybe the first task you're going to work on isn't going to be the most challenging thing he's got. We're going to do something that's pretty easy to do, and that you can see change pretty quickly. Why? Because then the teacher goes, shit, I'm pretty competent. If I do this, things change. Wow, okay. Now let's look at the next thing. And we like to be competent. You know, and I'm sure that one of the things that makes it fun is that it works. You know, it's like, whoa, okay, I've got some control here. Every one of us, and you know, there's kind of an issue to that. I mean, who here doesn't want to look competent? Okay. Me, I don't look kids too. Kids are not going to fail quietly. So if I've got them in a situation where the bulk of their messages is whatever we do at school here, you don't do it well. But hey, come back tomorrow enthusiastic, won't you? So I can tell you once again, you're not doing this very well. All right? I've got to shift that. That's the number one job I've got as a teacher. And I've got to provide feedback to kids on how well they're doing. And then I've got to set those traps so that they do well. Now that sounds, you know, well, yeah, sure, of course. That's a very tough job. And again, not all of our teachers have the skills to do that, and they're going to need help and support in the process. The issue comes down to that we've got some teachers who think some kids aren't worth the trouble. And that's where we get into the process of making this kind of happen. I want to look for things that are going to trigger action. Some teachers are going to need to look for incentives. Why should I do this? Okay. Why would I want to do this kind of effort?